Yes, so we are doing Hipaa, Model 13, Hipaa security, the practical session, what we do. So I'm just doing a quick recap. Last Saturday, we went through all those safeguards. So we went through, it has 3 main categories, supposed to be category, not safeguards. Then under that, we have administrative safeguard, physical safeguard, technical safeguards. Under the administrative, we have 9 standards: security management process, assigned security responsibility, workforce security, information access management, security awareness and training, security incidents procedures, contingency plan, evaluation, business associate contracts. Then we also looked at physical security, where we talked about facility access control, workstation use, workstation security, device and media control. Then we talked about technical. We said it has 5 standards: access control, that is a logical access control, audit control, integrity, personal and entity authentication, and transmission security. So today we're going to take each of these standards and go through, right? We're going to go through and ask ourselves what type of documents. So we're going to ask, like, we're performing Hipaa assessment on a covered entity, right? A covered entity that must comply with Hipaa. So we're performing security assessment on them. So first, we need to request for documents, right? Then also, when we get a document, we need to review the document. And there are some key things that we want to see within that document that will let us know that they are in compliance with Hipaa security requirements, right? So that is what we're going to look at today. So the first one is a preamble, right? That talks about covered entity and business associates must ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all EPHI protected against threats and unauthorized disclosure. So that is some kind of a preamble. But the first standard is security management process, like we saw on the spreadsheet, security management processes. So that is what we're going to go through. So security management processes. So just a second. Good. First requirement under the security management processes that we went through is conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of the potential risks and vulnerabilities to the confidentiality, integrity, availability of electronic protected health information held by the covered entity. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to type everything. I have it here open. I don't think you should see where I have opened it. Good. I don't expect you to see what I have opened it here. So what we're going to do is that we're going to discuss, right? And then when we are done, I will paste some of the responses that I have here. So you are performing a security assessment on a covered entity, and Hipaa requires that they should conduct a thorough risk assessment, right, of potential risk and vulnerabilities that identify the CIA of PHI, right, that can have any impact on PHI. So if you hear CIA is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So what document? First, we need to look at the documentation or the policy that the company or the covered entity or the hospital, or when you say covered entity, we're talking about hospital, or we are talking about a practice doctor or insurance company that they are collecting people's PHI, protected health information. So that is a covered entity. What document is there that is holding on? I mean, is holding them up to task that they are complying with HIPAA. So that is the first thing we will ask ourselves: what document can you prove? Just cast your mind back about the poem that we talk about, right? The test plan. It's something similar to the test plan, right? Do they have a document? They provide you the document, then you're going to review. So they're supposed to provide us a document. Then we will do the review to see that it covers all the information that is necessary to fulfill that this company or this covered entity perform security assessment. So what document do you think they should have? Those of you who were able to go through the HIPAA NIST 800-66 that I recommended, at least you have a fair idea about the document. Yeah. Has somebody tried? So if I want to see, you want to prove that you have performed security risk assessment, what document do you have to show? Yes, Sabria.
I'm gonna guess the risk management program. Would
You
that
have
be?
a point, but I want to be specific, right? You have a point there, but let us be specific. So I come to you, I said, okay, HIPAA requires that you should perform risk analysis, and the statement says that conduct an accurate, thorough risk assessment. So what document? Yes, Ruth.
Is it the security system, the SSP security system security plan?
SSP is with federal. No, put SSP aside at the moment.
Okay.
Right. Uh-huh. I can see the type of document is right at what is right at the question that we say, right? So the question that you ask, what you're looking. Okay, Bill.
I would say the security management policy.
Security management policy. Okay, that's fine. But to be specific here, right? We are looking at. Okay, Sheldon. Then we continue. Sheldon, your hand is up. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, we can't hear you. I think check your microphone. Sometimes maybe passing through wireless or something else. So check it. Okay, let's move on. Sheldon, if you can check. So what you need to check for is previous risk or security assessment document, right? If it's a covered entity, HIPAA requires them to do risk assessment. So they should be able to provide you any previous risk assessment that they have performed or any form of assessment they perform on the environment that had helped them to identify PHI, right? So that should be the first document you should ask, right? Good. So when you get that document, that is the review part. We're going to review. Now they provided you previous risk or security assessment document. When you get that document and you are going to review, the review is going to help you to know the gaps, what they have in place and what they don't have. What do you think we should look at? Yes, from that document. We have a lot to cover tonight, so let's try and work faster. So if you see a risk assessment document, what do you want to see? You can raise your hand quick. Yes, Fenton.
Should we be looking at the HIPAA security rules to see if they have the documents that are covered in there?
That's a point. But the risk assessment itself is a HIPAA security rule, right? But what do we want to see? That if they said they do risk assessment, what do we want to see? Okay, I have a couple of hands up. That's good. Betty.
Okay, so
Yes, Betty.
what?
Yeah.
So when you get a document, I think because that's a past document. That's a past.
Mhm.
I mean, policies they have in place. So you want to review and see if these policies are actually in place. They're actually implementing them.
Mm-hmm. But how would you know that they are implementing it? That is a good point, but I want to know. So, Nitaki.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is where you can make use of the sample questions we talked about. For example, you can ask, okay, so is there intelligence available from agencies? So you can use those sample questions and then
Mhm.
go through what they have given you to check one after the other to see whether they have those things in place. That's what I'm thinking of.
Okay. Okay, that you have a point. Last person before then we move on. DA. Who is DA?
Yeah, it's Daniel.
Oh, Daniel. Okay,
Hey,
good.
I think it all boils down to the weaknesses in the system. So that's pretty much the vulnerabilities, right? That's
Good.
what pretty much you're going to be looking at. Where are the weaknesses?
Good. You have a point. So when they perform the assessment, right? Remember it says to assess, conduct accurate and thorough assessment of the potential risk and vulnerabilities, right? So when they did that assessment, they identify a couple of vulnerabilities, right? Those vulnerabilities that they identify, did they remediate them, right? And how often is this assessment done, right? As best practice, how often should we do risk assessment? Yes. Remember, threat and vulnerability keeps changing. So how often do we do risk assessment? Should
Monthly,
we?
I believe.
As
Somebody
frequently as
say monthly.
possible. Maybe
Come
every
again?
month, at least
Every
maybe,
month, that's going to be a lot.
or maybe
Can
every
you hear me?
quarter.
At least
Yearly.
every year.
Uh-huh.
Okay. At least every year we need to perform risk assessment. Sheldon and Osman, is there a question? Okay, I
No, I
think
was gonna just say once a
wanted to
year.
respond.
So
Okay, once a year, that's good. So I have these points that we may want to consider. How often is a
can
risk
you hear me now,
assessment
Alex?
done? Yeah, Sheldon, I can hear you now.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I
No
was
worries.
with what you were saying. I was trying to figure out like were you asking the steps because I was gonna say
No.
identifying the threats and the vulnerabilities. Of course, that's first. So did you want us to give you more after that? Like
No.
identifying the asset values and things like that?
No, look at the question. That is risk analysis. It's not asking for risk management. So we'll come there later on. Right.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so let's move on. So how often is risk assessment done? Right? Do they conduct how often is risk assessment done? Right? Do they perform risk assessment every year, or maybe after every major changes in the system, they perform risk assessment? That is very important. They need to state that within their document. Is any findings and how the findings were remediated, right? Daniel talked about it's about vulnerabilities. Yes, when you perform assessment, you want to find your weaknesses. You want to find where the areas that you are falling short, so that you can close those gaps, right? And when they did assessment and they found those gaps, did they close those gaps? Did they fix those gaps? Any outstanding findings that have not been remediated, right? Is there any outstanding findings? Like sometimes you perform risk assessment and there are a lot of findings and they don't fix them. It could be lack of budget. It could be lack of personnel. It could be so many things, right? So if there's any of them that they have not remediated them, it should be a genuine concern. Why haven't they fixed them, right? So those are the key things, right? Good. I hope it's clear now. Let's move on to the next one. We have a lot to cover, but trust me, by the end of this exercise, you should be able to perform Hipaa security assessment without any sweat. Good. The next one is, this one should be straightforward. Risk management. This is required. Implement security measures sufficient to reduce risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable and appropriate level to comply with the Hipaa security, the preamble at the top there, right? So what document do you expect them to provide to give you an idea that they have risk management process in place? Sheldon, you should answer this. Okay, Sabria's hand is up.
I believe now this is where the risk management program will probably be at.
Excellent, excellent. They need to show a statement or maybe a document that talks about their risk management program that they have in place, right? It could be a risk management policy, it could be a risk management program, or depends on how they have named it, right? But it should be something similar to risk management program, where management have stated their commitment in managing risk. So if you see risk management program, then what should come into your mind? What are the key things that you're going to look out for? I told you this is going to repeat over and over. Yes, Osman. You're on mute.
We're looking out for risk identification, risk assessment, risk remediation, and continuous monitoring.
Okay, that is correct, right? So anytime you see risk assessment, anytime you see risk assessment, risk management, you want to see within the document what process do they follow to identify risk, right? What process do they follow to perform risk assessment? What process do they follow to respond to the risk? And also in monitoring the risk. That is very, very important. So these are the 4 key things. So always keep that one in mind. Anytime you hear risk management, let these 4 things come into your mind: risk identification, assessment, response, and evaluation. Good. Let's move on to the next one. Sanction policy, like the name sounds, sanction. I remember when I was in the high school, those days, I mean, back home, we do have boarding schools, right? So we do have sanction prefects, right? So when you hear somebody is in charge of sanction, that means that he's in charge of punishment, right? Apply appropriate sanctions against workforce members who fail to comply with the security policies and procedure for the covered entity. So what document will you want to see? I mean, most of it, let's try to put it in see our own work environment, right? Most often, which type of document or where do we find document that talks about employee punishment or maybe employee sanction or maybe something like that if somebody goes against the law? It's the same thing here in the covered entity. Sabria.
You normally see that in like an employee handbook or.
Good, that is correct. Employee handbook, and mostly is managed by which department?
Human resources.
Human resource. You got it. So I told you some of these things, you guys are doing it, but you haven't really noticed is security. So it can be depending on the company. Some of them have sanction policy or HR document, right? HR documents, like, let me put here into brackets, employee handbook, right? So we do have them there, that if you go against the Hipaa law, right, we will sanction you, right? And when you see a sanction policy or HR document that talks about sanction, what are some of the things that you want to see, the terms that you want to see within that statement or that talks about the sanction? Some of the terms that we want to see.
Like failure to comply
Mm-hmm.
would result in some sort of disciplinary action.
Some disciplinary action. And what are some of the disciplinary actions that we mostly notice they state over there?
Yes. Sometimes they have
Termination.
warnings or termination.
Warnings. Uh-huh.
Yeah, termination.
Terminations.
Suspension.
Demotion. Query. Write-up. Right? Those are some of the things that you want to see over there. Right? You want to see in the document. And it tells you that this company is committed to anybody who goes against the compliance of Hipaa. That look, if you go against the law, this is what is going to happen, right? Good. So you want to see some of these terms. Fenton.
Yeah. It's the security awareness and training, a document you'd like to see as well.
We'll
Because
get
when
there.
they do that, they kind of tell you, here are the policies, here are what you can and cannot do, and all that stuff.
Good. We'll get there very soon. It's part of it. It's part of the documentation, but this is specifically to sanction, right? Good. So I said, I mean, some of you're familiar with this already, but you've never applied to security. So Fenton, you're on course. We'll get there very soon. Okay. Information system activity review. Implement procedures to regularly review records of information system activity, such as activity logs, access reports, and security incident tracking reports, right? So what do you want to see? What type of documentation do you want them to provide you to know that they are following this? Fenton?
Audit logs.
Mm-hmm. Audit logs, good. Any more? Yep. So the things are there. They've listed them. Audit logs, system access report, security incident tracking, right? These are all examples. So you can have this also within the audit policy, right? They do have every company, I mean, they do have a policy that covers audits, right? So audit policy / monitoring and guidelines, monitoring guidelines, access review, audit logs, etc. Incident report tracking documents, right? They can give you high an information about, okay, when it talks about this system, I mean, this company or this covered entity, reviewing system to make sure that people are doing the right thing, this is what they follow, right? Good. So what do you want to see here? When you get this document, audit policy, monitoring guideline, access review, audit logs, security incident tracking reports, what do you actually want to see there in that document that will give you that granular understanding that these people are really doing the right thing? Yes, Sabria.
Would the procedures list that? Like if there was a step-by-step?
Good. There need to be some kind of step-by-step how they review the logs. Yep, that's okay. I mean, that's good. Yep. Right. So log review is very, very important. So some companies, they just aggregate the logs and it is sitting there somewhere, nobody reviews it. But it is a good practice to have either a daily review or they should have like an AI. Now is AI is driving everything. AI bots that is reviewing the logs automatically. Anytime people start, they log into the computer, they start using it. The AI start keeping record and analyzing them whether they are doing the right thing, right? So you may want to check how often is this audits being reviewed, right? It's very, very important. The frequency of reviewing the audit logs is very, very, or the documents or how people are assessing the environment is really, really important, right? So how often is this done? Is it daily, weekly, or monthly? Is there any audit trail? Audit trail means that when people log into the system and they are moving from one place to another place, is there any tracking that you can know that, okay, when Alex log into a system, the EMR or EHR, electronic health record, to assess, as Alex is a nurse, to assess the data that is on the system. Alex assess his own data, he assess his daughters, he assess this. So there need to be some kind of trail, right? Automated. So now people use manual and it is difficult. Now there are some automated tools. We call them SIEM, Security Incidents and Event Monitoring Tool, SIEM. So there are other security trainings that talk about SOC analysts, right? SOC is SOC analyst. And all that they do is they sit behind computer, looking at traffic to see whether there's any kind of abnormality. So those automated tools, right, they help. Example is called Splunk. Another example is Alert Logic, right? So security, they help you to monitor the system. So do they have anything of that sort within their documentation? That tells you that they are committed to monitoring how people assess PHI within the environment. Good. The next requirement or standard is assigned security responsibility, right? This standard is on its own. It has no requirements. It's just on its own, right? So what will give you the idea, or what document would you look out for to let you know that this is what this company is committed to when it comes to assigning security responsibility, somebody to be in charge of Hipaa security? Yes. Fenton. You're on mute.
The SSO.
The SSO. SSO is a system security
officer.
Good, but that is correct. So that is a person, right? But what will you know that the company is committed to having an SSO?
By hiring one.
By hiring one, good, but they mostly stand on something to hide, right? Yes, Osman. Osman, you're on mute.
I said by considering their HR policy, the type of positions that they have.
Very good. So this can be found within HR document as well. And mostly the HR document should be able to state the job description of a Hipaa security officer, right? That will tell you that this company is committed to Hipaa, right? But otherwise, when you go to the covenant, you can just point to somebody. Oh, okay, Jeffrey is a Hipaa security officer, right? But you need to ask for Jeffrey's job description. Okay, can you give me a job description that you base on to employ Jeffrey? Then they will pull it up and you see that Jeffrey was employed to be like a legal person or something like that. Legal is even better. Jeffrey was employed as a nurse. What has a nurse job description got to do with Hipaa? Right? So they need to provide you a job description that states the role of Jeffrey as a Hipaa security officer. Right? Good. So I think I've explained it already. So here, that is what you want to see, right? So you want to see the specification of for the job role, make sure you want to check that the job role that they are providing covers HIPAA. Yes, Ruth.
So are you trying, when you ask for that job description, are you trying to see how qualified the employees are for that specific role?
No, we are not interested about their qualification, but I want to know what the role that the company has employed somebody in, right? If the person is a nurse, sometimes you go and say, oh, this person is a HIPAA security officer, right? But in actual fact, you go and talk to the person, you see the person is a nurse. A nurse taking care of patients. How can somebody taking care of patients be a HIPAA security officer? There's a disconnect, right? But they need to have a job role that says that anybody, we don't care. If Jeff is a nurse, but Jeff has been employed as a security officer, then the Jeffrey's work must be in security, not to go to the ward and take care of people. That is what we want to see. You get it? So you look at the specification of the job role. Does it cover HIPAA or is covering something else? Right. Remember, we are trying to perform an assessment to see where the shortfalls are so that we can correct them, that the covered entity will not fall short to the HIPAA security rule or HIPAA law. Right. Good. The next one is workforce security. So workforce security has some requirements under that. And the first requirement is workforce authorization and supervision, right? Workforce authorization and supervision. So what document, policy or documentation can we refer to when it comes to workforce authorization and supervision? So it says implement procedures for the authorization or supervision of workforce members who work with electronic protected health information or in a location where it might be accessed. Authorization. Yes. Can somebody try? Yes, dear. Daniel.
Shouldn't there be system accessibility? Just for instance, if someone is hired, as to which level that person is in the company, you know, as to what level of accessibility should that person have to be able to log into the system, the workstations, in order to be able to manage.
Good. You have a point. So the correct name is access control policy.
Okay.
Right. You have it. That is access control policy. Yes. We can look at that document. Ruth, any more?
Could it be account management as well, like the opening and authorization of personnel for specific accounts?
Good. So account management mostly also falls under the access control policy. That is correct. Good. You guys are getting the concept. You can also get it on a standard operative procedure on workforce authorization, which is mostly an HR document, right? SOP on workforce authorization. It can also, that is HR document. You can get some of these things in there. Yes, Kingsley.
Could the background checks fall under that thing? The background checks the company does. Could it be one of those?
We'll get there.
Okay.
You can see workforce clearance. So if you have said it, then that should be it. So when we get there, you give your answer to that. So this is about authorization. How do you authorize people and supervise people? So what do we want to see here? What do we want to see here under the authorization? Right. I think Daniel mentioned that, right? If you are new high, somebody is high, how the person must be authorized or whatever training they have to go through to see, to have access to a system. So authorization process. Daniel said it, like new high must be trained before accessing PHI, right? If you're a new high, you don't just say, okay, we just hire Daniel. So Daniel, because Daniel is a nurse, Daniel should just start having access to the system, PHI. No, you need to train the new hire, then have an authorization process. Say, okay, Alex, Daniel works with Alex. Maybe Alex is a supervisor, so Alex will request for access for Daniel. The Alex's boss will approve it. Then Daniel will be trained to have so and so. Let Daniel know that okay, you are the nurse or the nurse practitioner. These are the level of access you should have. This is the training. If you need any kind of authorization, follow A, B, C, D. They need to state all those things in there. Right. One thing about America is about documentation. Right. America don't joke with documentation. So they need to state all. Otherwise, if there is something happens, the person says, no, you never trained me. You never told me. But if there's a documentation, say, look, here is it. That's why whenever we do training, we make people sign for it, right? Sign for the training. So I think it's even here that we'll look at it. Okay, so workforce clearance procedures. Implement procedure to determine that the access of a workforce member to electronic protected health information is appropriate. So Kingsley, what should be your answer? Kingsley.
I think the background checks and
so the background check and all those kind of things. What document mostly states that if you are employed to handle PHI, we'll do background check on you? Yes, Bernard.
The HR document.
Oh, okay. Some people can't wait. Okay, it's HR document. That's correct, right? And sometimes organizational handbook, right? They state those things in, right? That look, per Hipaa, before people have access to PHI, right? You need to do background check, right? Good. So let me copy that here, like Kingsley said. Good. So they need to be background checks, training before accessing confidential data or systems, right? They can all be found within this document. Good. Let's look at the next one. Termination procedures. Somebody has gone contrary to the law or to the policies of the company. What should they do? Right? Termination procedures. So what documents should we look out for? Betty?
Same HR document.
I agree. Yes, so mostly HR. So in this case, when you are doing HIPAA security assessment, some of these questions has to be directed to the HR. It's not a HIPAA security officer you are interviewing or you are working with. It's the HR that you need to interview them and ask them about some of these questions. So what do you want to see here under the termination process? Yes? Anybody? Can somebody try? Yes, Sabria.
Probably a checklist on, deactivating from the system. You might see something like that.
That is correct, right? That is a termination processes, right? So when somebody is terminating processes, what process do they follow? Termination of access, right? Any exit interview, what process have they put in place? It's really, really important, right? And yeah, termination of access. So like Sabria said, deactivation. You need to deactivate the person, right? If you don't deactivate the person and the person is a disgruntled employee, they can go back home and connect to your system and start causing problems for you. Good. So last time we said about, okay, the next one is information access management. But under the access management, clearinghouse is not part of what we do. It's a different entity altogether. So we jumping that. So here, the first one here is access authorization. Access authorization. And you see some of the things are repetitive, like they repeat, right? Access authorization. So what document do you want to see here? Authorizing people to have access, right? Implement policies and procedures for granting access to electronic protected health information. For example, through access to a workstation, transactions, programs, processes, or other mechanisms. So what document, Betty?
Yeah, so we're gonna use the access control documents, I think, for both.
Access control policy. That is true, right? And whenever you hear about access, this is very open, right? Access authorization. So this include physical access and logical access, right? Physical access to the facility, how you control visitors and people coming in or going to certain places that you don't want visitors to go. These are all part of it. Then the logical access to the computer systems, right? You need something to control that. Then it can also, some companies also do have as an evidence to let you know that we don't just give people access based on you just be high, but we want you to go through a proper documentation. They give you access acquisition form where somebody has to fill out form, sponsor you, then the senior most person will approve it before you are given access, right? So these are some of the things, the documents that you can request or they can provide for you to review. And when you get these documents, what do you want to see here? I kind of said it, so if somebody can repeat it for us, that would be great. Yes, access authorization. How access is authorized. Yes, Ruth.
You will be looking at the step-by-step process for the authorization and who is authorized to authorize the users.
Mm-hmm.
Or who is
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So you want to see how access is authorized, right? She said it right. It says step by step, right? You can say that, okay, role-based access. I think Daniel said this earlier on, right? Based on your role, they'll give you specific access, right? Access acquisition processes. What process do they follow, right? Do they follow a process that says that when a new hire is employed, somebody has to sponsor, standing up. Somebody has to sponsor the person's access. Somebody has to authorize. Somebody has to vet it. They will check 2 forms of ID. These are all access process. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. Anytime we get a job, we go to HR or somewhere, they will look at 2 forms of ID. These are all access authorization processes. They look at your job role and they will place you at the right place, right? So is there any process like that that they follow? Good. Access establishment and modification. So those of you who have taken your time to go through the understanding controls, if you are done with access control portion, you now appreciate why I'm saying that if you understand security controls, it will make you a good security analyst. You can see that it's the same security controls that we are meeting over here, right? And it cuts across all the models. But the most important thing is you know how to apply it based on the type of model you are dealing with, right? Good. So let's continue. Access establishment and modification. So what document can we look at? Do you agree with me that it can be the same documentation here? Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
same documentation, right? That we have here. It could be a physical access that people physically going to the facility, right? Access modification, maybe you started as a cleaner within the covered entity, right? A cleaner, maybe you have access to specific areas. You went to school, you're still working with a company, you got somebody, it happened, New York University, somebody started as a cleaner. She joined New York University. He went to school over there, he became a nurse. Now his access establishment has to be changed. They need to modify the access, right? Both physically and logically, right? So it means that the code, there need to be a statement says that, okay, if you started as a nurse and now you're a doctor, maybe initially there were some places you couldn't go, but now that you are a doctor, there are other places you can go. There need to be a clear policy that guides the organization on that. So you want to check how access is established, right? And how the access is modified. Could be based on the job role, promotion, or demotion. How do they modify their access, right? Good. So let me put some examples here. So example, maybe promotion, maybe change of role, right? Etc. So anytime there's a change, you shouldn't be like the same person, the same access. There has to be some changes, right? Maybe initially you used to be the engineer at the data center. Now you've taken on a role as a security analyst. They shouldn't be allowing you to come to the data center anymore because you no longer work with them. So there need to be some kind of modification to your access. Good. Security awareness and training. So I think somebody talked about that. So we'll touch on that. So under that, we have security reminders, periodic security updates, right? You need to send periodic security updates. So what document will prove that this covered entity has been sending security awareness or security tips to the workforce to be aware of some of the security issues? Yes. Can somebody try? Was it Fenton? I think you mentioned about a document earlier on. Yes, Ruth.
Could it be some automated, maybe periodic emails that are sent out for certain awareness, depending on what the issue is that you need to address? So you'll be, it could be like tickers on the computer as well that may be sent out as reminders for certain security issues.
Good. So those are the things that you may want to check within the document. So what document, as a Hipaa security expert, that okay, you are interviewing a covered entity, and we are talking about security reminders. So what document do you expect them to provide, or you ask for? Hey, so do you have a policy that covers security reminders? And they said yes. Okay, then you be specific. Can you give me this document so that I can see it there? Or where have you written it? So yeah, that's what I want to. So what you said is what you want to see within that document. But what do they have it documented? Yes, where they have it documented that they do security reminders. Yes, Osman.
Could it be their training procedures, training policy?
I agree with you. That is correct, right? This must be found within policy, security awareness policy, HR handbook, or sample training materials, right? Sometimes you ask, okay, you've been doing Hipaa training for new hires, for employees. Can you give me a sample training material, a document? And they should be able to provide you, right? So when you check that document, what do you want to see? I think Ruth mentioned some of them, email reminders or something that is on their intranet, right? She mentioned them. So you want to see how often, because security training is really, really important. That would be like your first line of defense, just like risk management, right? So you want to check how often is it updated. Some companies, they've written their security training document like 1990s, and they are still using it. 1990s ransomware wasn't a problem, but now ransomware is a problem. So are they updating it? So you want to see, right, the version control. Maybe they started in this year, they've been updating it every year and adding new content, right? Check the content to see if it touches on security training, right? The content that they give you. Sometimes you may not have the time to go through every document, but the table of content is good, right? Is this training periodic? Is it a periodic training, or is just like once a while, then they do it, right? What is the mode of training? Is it through email reminders? Is it something that they put on their monitors, right? There's this pen that I still keep. Let me see, I think I have it here. It's so cool. I got it from New York University, right? When I used to work with them. It's another security reminder. And when you click on it, it said, the first question says, stepping away. Then when I click the top, it comes lock your computer. That is a reminder. Using passwords, keep them private. Don't know sender, don't click on links, right? That is a reminder, right? It could be just a normal email or some small giveaways that you give to people, right? And I've been looking for a company to do some of these things for me so that I'll share it with the student, but I haven't gotten somebody yet. It's so cool. It's so cool. So these are the security reminders that Hipaa says, look, something that you can send out or you can do to keep your workforce in constant remembrance that, look, there are, security issues out there. So always make sure that they are aware and they don't fall for it. Good. The next one is protection from malicious software. What documents? Right? Do you all agree that it will be the same document here? Yes. It could be the same document here that you have some of the information you are looking for, right? You can, what type of training addresses like how employees, the workforce will be able to guard against malicious software, right? So it's very, very important. Malicious software, sometimes it is done like through phishing awareness training. Let people know that, look, if you don't know the sender, don't click on links, right? If you don't know that you don't really need an application to do your work, or the application hasn't gone through proper security vetting, right? We'll be learning about vendor security assessment. Don't install it, right? In other ways, now companies have technical controls that if you don't have administrative, right, you cannot even install some apps on the company's computer, right? So that is how it's supposed to be. Like, you need to constantly train people that there are some malicious software out there that if you don't know it, don't click on it, right? But make sure that you know, or you talk to the right people before those software are installed. So here you can also check the content, right? Does the content of the training that they are offering to the workforce touches on protection from malicious software? It's really, really important, right? Good. The next one is log-in monitoring. Log-in monitoring. This is still about training, right? It's still under the workforce training. So what document are we talking about here? Do we want to see here? Hello, somebody trying? It's like everybody's quiet now. Yes, Osman.
The same security awareness policy.
Yes, I agree with that. So this is telling you that sometimes one document, right, can provide you the same information you are looking for, right? One document, it could be just a security policy. It can provide you security awareness policy, can provide you all that you're looking for. So that is one thing you should look for. So it's not like, okay, now I want login monitoring policy, I want a sanction policy. So that is one thing you should also have it in mind, right? As you do the assessment and you are asking for, maybe they provide you security awareness policy, right? You can see that it covers most of it. There's this company online that they've published their Hipaa policy. I mean, they publish their Hipaa policy online. And I always share that with my students. So let me look for that and put it in the link, the chat. You can open that and bookmark it. I'll share it on the screen over here. Right. So let me bring this one here. Let me see, which one am I sharing? Good. So this company, I saw them. I was doing as one of my research I was doing, and I saw this. They have their Hipaa policies published online, right? So, sorry. Yeah, you can. One thing that I encourage my students to do is to copy, right? Copy from the introduction. Let me put it in the chat. Copy from the introduction and paste it on a Word document, because you may never know when they take it off, because it's, oh, sorry, I think it's, I copied the wrong thing. Maybe they will take it off one day and you are looking for it, you don't have it, but it doesn't cover everything, but at least it's really good. So you can see that it covers policy, policy management policy, role policy, acceptable use, remote access, third-party policy. So it covers a lot, right? And I'll be giving you other documents that you can get policies from. But this is also a good example of policies for a company, right? Hipaa policies. It's a Hipaa company. They call them HealthWise. Good. Let's continue. Good. So where are we? So what do we want to see here in the login monitoring? As the name sounds, log in monitoring. When you log into our computer, you don't have privacy. So those of us that we've been checking our bank statement, our banking on company's computer, please notice that if they haven't trained you, they are supposed to tell you. Or even sometimes when you are logging into the computer, it tells you that everything that you do is being monitored. So the same thing should be done at the training, right? So you want to check the training material or the policy that they do train employees, that everything that the workforce, like, they do train them that everything that they do is under monitoring. You need to train them so that it shouldn't be like somebody will act out of ignorance, right? So if you train them and they do it, then it means that it's a deliberate thing. They know and they've done that. So training, workforce must be trained that their activities will be monitored, right? Workforce must be trained. Workforce trained that, let me rephrase that, must be trained. Sorry, must be trained that their activities will be monitored, right? So if you are not entitled to go and see, I think last time Kingsley said it rightly, right? Maybe you have been assigned to 5 patients to work with, then you should have access to those 5 patients' medical record. But if you go beyond that 5 and go and see something else, some nurse or somebody else says, sorry, another patient record, then you are putting yourself in danger. The monitoring, the system will flag it out, right? And that can lead to a HIPAA breach, or it can cause you to lose your job. Good. So some nurses, if you hear that, oh, and this nurse license has been revoked or blah, blah, sometimes it's not anything so serious that they have done, but out of curiosity, right? There's a saying that says curiosity kills the cat. Out of curiosity, they went beyond their access level to see certain things, and it cost them their job. Good. Password management, still under the training, right? So what should we do? What should we do? Where can we find this document? And I think we all agree that it should be the same thing, the same training, security awareness policy, HR handbook, training materials, right? That is where they should be able to train workforce how to manage passwords, right? You do a walkthrough. Some of you may be interested in HIPAA. You get a HIPAA job and they said, okay, you've been assigned to this covered entity, go and do walkthrough. You start lifting laptops, looking under tables. You see people have written password and pasted it under the table, right? Good. So here we want to train people how to manage password, right? You need to train them how they need to configure password, right? You need to let people know the type of passwords that are acceptable within the organization. It should be a mix of upper and lower cases, mix of numbers, special cases, right? How often the password must be changed, how long the password must expire. Tell them, right? Train them that, look, in this company, our minimum password requirement is 9 characters. It's 10 characters. It has to be a combination of upper and lower cases, right? The passwords must be changed every 3 months, or the passwords must be changed every 6 months or every 180 days, right? Avoid sharing your password with other employees, right? Because anytime somebody log into a system, it requires you to use your username and password. So the system starts collecting logs on the username. So if you give your password to your other employee to log into a system to do something, remember, whatever they are doing it, the system recognizes that activity as you. So if the person does anything that is contrary to the policy, they will come for you, right? Because in the first place, you shouldn't share your password. Paisley, you have experience to share with us?
Yeah, I have an experience to share, and
Great.
this experience have been, from two work environments. IT drops the ball sometimes. They are not perfect, okay?
Yeah.
This from my experience. We think, oh, they have all the controls in place, but sometimes they can drop the ball, and terrible things can happen. For instance, I was so surprised that 10 years after using a hospital for clinicals, I was a student at the time. They created me a password that I used as a student. Okay. Now, after 10 years, I was hired by the same hospital. When I tried to document, it would go to the student name. I'm like,
How?
the account they created 10 years ago as a student. I tried to
Yep.
document, it will go to the student account. And being a student, I shouldn't have the access I'm having. So I started having trouble with two passwords. I called my manager. I'm like, hey, don't hold me responsible for somebody who
Yeah.
doesn't exist. This is 10 years ago. So they fixed the problem. So imagine
Yeah.
if I was a hacker, and taking advantage of having two passwords. Okay, I mean 2 accounts. I
Accounts.
could do any damage. Then secondly,
Mm-hmm.
I worked in a not serious organization like that. Okay, I mean a nursing home some a
Yeah.
while ago.
Mm-hmm.
They don't block you as a nurse. They let you
Access.
access the command line That is crazy.
That's crazy.
They
Yeah.
should block you
Yeah.
from using the command line. But
Yeah.
if I was a bad person, I could, write some bad program, and if they fire me,
That's
it will
it.
bring down. Yeah, so these people drop the ball. They are not. That's why
Yep.
they do. I understand what Hipaa is doing.
Mm-hmm.
The IT
Yes.
guys are not perfect sometimes. They overlook some things. So the oversight
Yep.
is really
Yep.
good.
Yeah. So you are right. So that was a big error on the system. It means that when they create an account, password never expires, right? And they did not deactivate, or maybe they deactivated you, but I don't think they deactivated you, right? It was in the system. So that was whoever was managing their IT's fault, right? It is very, very wrong, right? Good. Nice experience.
And this
Good.
is a big organization. I wouldn't call their name. They're in the medical center. You would think they have it all together, and they are dropping the.
Yes.
They can't make such a mistake.
Yep.
So that
Yep.
oversight by Hipaa is good.
It's really happening, right? I told you I have a contract that I'm working on with a hospital in New York, right? You'd be surprised some of the things that I found. If I tell you right now, you'll be shocked. Say, really? It's a big hospital. Why should they make such a, I mean, that small mistake that somebody can capitalize on? And interestingly, after my field visit and interview, like one month or 3 weeks later, they got hacked, right? And the things that are listed, that is the same thing that the forensic experts identified, right? So sometimes security, some people are there, they are not doing their job, but they are taking pay. But it's unfortunate. And now some of these people, their heads are rolling, right? So when they find out, they'll fire you. Good. Let's continue. So the next one is security incident procedures, right? And under that we have respond and reporting, right? Incidents, response, and reporting. So what document do we want to see here? That tells us about how the organization respond to incidents and also report to incidents. Yep. Can somebody try? What document would you want to see that this company is committed to responding to an incident, and at the end of it, they also report on an incident? Yes, Fenton.
Security awareness and training.
No, we finished with awareness, the training portion.
Oh, okay.
So you can see here that this is under the incident response. Okay, let's give away to Ruth.
It will be a risk register
A risk register.
or like an incident report.
Come again?
An incident report or a risk register.
Okay, exactly. You said it. So incident response policy, right? Risk register is very big. It's broad, right? It's broad. It covers the organization, but this is specific to incident. When there is an incident, how do they respond to that incident? Is there any procedure that they follow to respond to the incident, right? And also, if you have to report, somebody has to report an incident. Maybe you are within the system and you notice that no, you are not touching your mouse, but as you log into the computer, your mouse is moving, clicking and opening pages, right? Your email is sending emails to people that you haven't done that. That is an incident. You need to report, right? So there need to be a document that people can follow to report an incident, right? Yes, Ni.
So can we also talk about the audit, review, and analysis and reporting? A document like that.
Come again.
Um, I'm looking at, so we have one that talks about audit, review, analysis, and reporting. One of the controls we talked about. So I was thinking whether there could be a document that talks about all the audits they have done, the analysis, and then how they report those information.
Oh, are you talking about one of the controls here that we talked already, or?
Yeah, so wondering whether there could be a document that reports on the audits that they have done, any analysis that they have recorded, and then reporting on those things. Yeah.
That would be the evaluation. We'll get there.
Evaluation. Okay.
Yeah, evaluation. Yes. Very good. So within this audit, the incident response document, when we are reviewing, we want to see what we call calling tree. Calling tree is when an incident happens, who are the people that we are going to call, right? Who are the people, the first point of call, right? There need to be some kind of calling tree. Recovery process, right? Incident reporting, how long it takes to report an incident, right? Is very, very important, right? Incident response tabletop exercise, playbook, right? They do a playbook exercise that, okay, assuming today we are there and somebody report that somebody has taken over my account, right? I can't have access to my account anymore. What are we going to do as security? Right? There need to be a playbook, right? That's, oh, okay, immediately maybe we will deactivate the person's account. We'll go and look at the logs where the whoever stole the account, the places that they went to, something like that, to give you a high level process to follow whenever there is an incident, right? It's very, very important. The next one is establish policies and procedures for responding to an emergency or other occurrence. For example, fire. I think this falls under contingency plan, right? Contingency plan standard, right? So under that we have backup plan. So what document can we get under the contingency plan? Contingency plan says you have to establish policies and procedures for responding to an emergency or other occurrences, right? Occurrence, for example, fire, vandalism, system failure, natural disaster, that damages system that contain PHI. So the first requirement here is data backup plan. So here, establish and implement procedures to create and maintain retrievable exact copies of PHI, right? So what document should a process that they will follow to create exact copies of PHI if a contingency is activated or if there is an emergency within the organization? So what document do we expect? John?
Is that supposed to be the contingency plan policy?
Okay, so Alex, is that contingency plan policy? John, you have it. Just be bold and tell me contingency plan policy, right? That is correct. Yeah. So don't ask questions. So say it as it is. And you are right. Yes, contingency plan policy is correct, right? You need a contingency plan policy. Then also data backup plan or policy, depending on organization, right? So, yep, John, you're correct. Let me copy that and bring it here. So what do we want to see here in the contingency plan policy? Yep. Yes. What do you want to see? We are talking about backup plan. And I explained this and I told you that we'll go into details if you have watched the videos and the last training, right? I said it that, oh, we'll be going back to details, right? Backup plan. Yes, Betty?
So you might want to look if they have any backup in place. Is their backup center like far away from them or closer? If there is any emergency, would they be able to recover some of their data? Or if yeah, let me say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good point. Good. These are good points. Osman, then after John. Osman.
You look at what is the step-by-step procedures for backup. What are the acceptable equipment, things that they need for backup, and as she mentioned, what is the distance for the recovery site.
Okay, good point. John.
Yeah, Alex, I believe you're supposed to look out for whether they have a full backup. Like, is there any difference in the backup they have? That is existing. That is full backup plan that they had, and then you look at the differential, whether there's been a change in whatever they have before. That's whether there's an add-on or, takeoff.
Good.
Yeah.
You got it. Yep. I mean, you are all right. You're all right. But this one is the backup plan, the plan that they have in place, right? It's not a backup process. The plan. So John is right. What type of backup plan do they have in place? Type of backup. Are they practicing full backup? Are they practicing incremental or differential? It is a backup done every night. Is it nightly or daily, right? And is the backup done on tapes, or it is done offsite, like you guys talked about, or it is done on a cloud? You want to see something, right? Fenton, you want to add something?
Is the backup also encrypted?
Is the backup also encrypted? Good. Yeah, we'll talk about the encryption. And interestingly, it is part of the encryption requirement, right? Right. So encryption, data backup is very important. Now they have these hackers. We have what you call double barrel, right? So if you have a backup and they can attack the primary site and also go to your offsite and attack that site and encrypt both, right? So you need to have multiple diverse backup strategy so that whenever you get any ransomware attack, you will not be affected. Good. You guys are on track. Good. So the next one is disaster recovery, right? Disaster. So disaster is this is the best form of the best that you can say that an incident can lead to a disaster if it is not well managed, right? Maybe a small incident, somebody is identified on the network and you don't work on the person and deactivate the person, you just leave the person and the person try to go ahead and encrypt the whole organization's phone, and then it leads to a disaster. That is it. So disaster is kind of a bigger thing that can impact people's life. So because if it's a covered entity, you have people with a heart, it's pace monitoring and all those kind of things on the system, and somebody take your system into ransom, right? Those with the pace monitors and the heart implants are at the mercy of the attacker, right? They can cause some things some people can lose their lives. So that becomes a disaster. So what type of document do we want to see? Disaster recovery plan. Zulu.
Disaster recovery policy.
Disaster recovery policy, I agree with you. What else? Bernard?
I think I also have a contingency plan policy.
I agree with that. Any more? Vincent, your hand is up. You're on mute.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to look at contingency plan policy.
You want to say?
Yeah, someone just said it.
Okay, that is fine. Good. So you can have it in contingency plan as a whole, right? You can also have disaster recovery plan or policy, or you can also have business continuity plan.
Continuous
Right.
plan.
Most of the time, disaster recovery and business continuity plan goes together. So we have a document that says disaster recovery and business continuity plan. Right. Means that business continuity is what they will do to keep the business running even when we are in a disaster mode. Right. So that we don't break services to our clients. Right. That's what business continuity plan mostly covers. So what do we want to see here? Yes. It's not different from contingency. Yeah, John.
I believe anytime there is a disaster, there should be kind of a call log or a call center to fall on, for a quick response. So I believe there should be kind of a call system, maybe a disaster reporting system too.
Yep.
Yep.
You have it. So I told you guys, it's the same thing that most of you are doing our job, right? A calling tree. Who should we call when there is a disaster? Disaster reporting, recovery procedure, right?
And I'll give
Those are the
example.
things that we want to see. Come again.
I'll give example. So
yeah, you can go ahead.
So like my job, right? We have the fire department close to us. In case there is a fire, quickly we have like a intercom with them that quickly they respond to, because we are in the petrochemical industry. So it's kind of a volatile industry. So you have a network that we kind of fall in. So there's always a call, like a speed dial, that they can quickly respond to. And that is basically disaster management.
Exactly. So some of you, I mean, like I said, you are doing it at your daily job, but you haven't attributed that to security, and that is true. Yes, Kingsley, your hand is up.
I think it ties into some of the things we said. It could be cloud, organizations that have cloud storage in case of disaster. It could be those that get a second ISP, a second internet service provider in case of a disaster. Okay. It could be also, what they call warm and cold sites.
Yep, we'll come there.
You have a site with ready infrastructure, waiting for deployment.
Yep, we'll come there. We'll come to those recovery sites later on. We'll go deep into that. So you're right. So great. Vincent, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at saying if the organization should have a kind of automated button that could call the fire service in case of a fire break incident.
Yes, I think even in these modern houses, right? I mean, smart homes, if there is a fire, right, the fire service gets notified quickly, right, to the system. So there could be a way, but these are all part of the processes that should be within the document based on how they do theirs, right? That, okay, you can assess to see that this is a good one or it is falling short. There is a gap here. They don't have any form of reporting or reporting a disaster or something like that, right? So we are not really into the specificity of what they need to do, but at least they need to tell us the process, what they have in place. Why we are not there to recommend a technology to them, but the key thing is that we want to see that if a disaster strike, is there somebody they are going to call first? Is there a team they're going to call first? Is there a fire service they're going to call? Who are they going to? Something like that. If there's something like that in place, that is perfect. That's all that we are interested in.
All right.
Good. Let's continue. Emergency mode operation. Establish and implement as needed procedure to enable continuation of critical business processes for protection of the security of electronic protected health information while operating in an emergency mode, right? So sometimes there's emergency, something happened, the systems are down. I mean, nobody can have access to the systems. Should we sit down and fold our arms that nothing is working? There's a particular bank in Ghana. When you go there and the network is down, nobody works. We all sit there and the banks become choke, right? Is that how it's supposed to do? So what document?
Commercial bank.
Somebody just mentioned the name, right? I didn't want to mention the name, right? So when there is an emergency, something happened, right? Should we just sit down, right? What document? I mean, Hipaa said, no, you have to continue offering services to your client, right? So what document do we want to look? I mean, do we want them to provide to tell us emergency, they covered an emergency mode, right? Procedure or something like that. If there's an emergency, what document do they follow, right? It can still be the contingency plan, right? Some document, I've seen some companies that they have emergency mode operation plan, separate document. Then there is also a downtime procedure, right? So if there's the downtime, maybe the systems are not working as expected, there is an outage. Somebody talk about one ISP is out. I don't know, those of you who are using AT&T during summertime, I used to experience that. During summertime, they do have a lot of downtime. Sometimes we'll be having a very important meeting and the network is down. So what happened? If you have subscribed, your company subscribed to AT&T and you're having such a problem, right? Maybe you should have another company, ISP, right? So if one is down, another one will pick up. So that is how it is for emergency mode. So here, what you want to see is that how PHI is assessed, right, in an emergency mode, right? So it could be a paper-based or whatever it is, manual. So how PHI is assessed in emergency, how long the system can be down without affecting operation, or access to PHI, is there any manual process that they follow, right? Some companies or some hospitals, they can say, okay, if we can assess PHI downtime for about maybe, we call something RTO and RPO, downtime for about maybe 2 hours, we are okay. We can use paper charts, we can use paper documents, later on we transfer. That is acceptable, right? So they need to have those kind of services in place. The key thing is that we don't want to have a single point of failure when it comes to providing services to our clients, right? Good. Zulu, your hand is up.
I wanted to ask, can we ask also the incident response policy?
Incident response, yeah, I think most of the times, I think contingency plan covers incident response policy, but yeah, they can have that one too in there. I agree with that. Good. So I agree with that. Can have it in there. And like I said, at the end of the class today, I'm going to share this document with you so that it serves as your document, so that if you get a Hipaa job and you are being asked to perform Hipaa assessment, you have something to stand on. So when you're asking your questions and people will be nodding, they say, wow, this guy is sharp. They don't know that you have some cheat sheet somewhere that you are standing on to ask your questions. So, and that is the essence of it, right? Good. I remember, I mean, when I did my work with Hipaa job with Verizon, I was thinking like, I wish I knew this before I started that job, right? They would have held me a champion. But the research that I did, I was able to get some document. Anytime I ask series of questions, the people that I go with, they would just be nodding their head, but they didn't know that I was relying on some of these documents and the research that I did. But you are in the right hand, you're having it ahead of time. So when you get any HIPAA work that you're performing an assessment, you should be able to, it should be very, very easy for you to follow. Okay, let's continue. Testing and revision procedures. Implement process for periodic testing and the revision of contingency plans, right? Testing. So what document? Yep.
Looks like
Any
contingency plan.
document?
Looks like
Contingency plan.
has everything.
Very good. Contingency plan, the policy, that is correct, and testing and revision procedures. Sometimes they need to be testing and procedures, right? What you follow to do your testing, right? So here, even so, what do you want to see here?
The period of testing.
The period of testing, how often is the testing is done? I'll add that to the point that I have here, right? How often is testing done? Let me add one. It said, let's say testing period, right? You don't just get up and do any testing anyhow, right? So this is where it has to go through. Let me make it this cap. So here we can add change control, change control board, right? Change control board. You don't just get up and start performing changes or do testing. It has to go through proper approval, right? So let me put it there. Let me put that one there as a key point, proper approvals, right? So by going through change control board, right? You need to go through change control board to make sure that whatever testing you're going to perform, you follow the right policy. Yes, Betty.
Yeah, I wanted to say the test script, which will give you the process, the step-by-step guidelines for the testing.
Okay, so we need you need to have a procedure document, like what you're going to follow
Step by step,
to do
yeah.
the testing. Very good, very good. I agree with that. The next one that is very important to as well, application and data criticality analysis. Right, I explained this last Saturday. Application and data criticality analysis. So how do you, what document? Yes, what document can help you be able to know, okay, these are the applications that we have here. Yes, Zulu.
Data
Zulu,
management.
Johannes.
Yeah, data management policy.
Data management policy. Yep, but this one is about managing data, right? Managing data. So we can say that for this, we may want to look at like, we have this policy, what is it? Data criticality policy or data classification policy, right? For this particular one, data class, because data management is you're managing the life cycle of the data, right? Right from the initiation to decommissioning, but we are not talking about that, right? But we are interested in how do you know, segment your data? How do you segment your applications, right? Good. So we can have that one within contingency plan. Oh, John, sorry, I thought you were maybe you can tell me what we should find in there. Contingency plan, you can find it within. John, you want to say something?
I was saying that every application or data has an impact, so I believe that there should be an impact kind of analysis or impact scrutiny in this application on the data?
Yeah, that is correct. So like last time I was explaining, if you need to segment the applications within your organization, right? That let's say when you talk about any application that processes protected health information, PHI, that application will be put as a tier 1 application. That is a high risk application, high impact application, right? Any application that processes maybe employees' salary can be tier 2. Any application that processes any other data or that is not really, if we don't have it, maybe it's a public assessing, whatever it is, tier 3, right? Any data that is classified as PHI is tier 1, something like that. So there needs to be a document. Most of the times you can find it within business impact analysis or data classification policy, right? They put applications and data into tiers, right? Tiers. So when you hear tier 1, tier 2, this is a tier 1 application, this is a tier 2 data, or tier 3, that is what they are trying to say. Tier 1 is a critical application, tier 2 is the next critical, and tier 3, meaning that if something happened to the organization and we want to rescue the data, right, we'll go for tier 1 first. Or we want to rescue the application so that we'll continue to do service to the organization, we go for tier 1. That is all that it says, right? So it's very, very important. Evaluation. Under the evaluation, yes, under the evaluation is on its own. So I think this is where it comes. Like, no, audit will come later on, right? Evaluation, like I said, at a point in time, you need to kind of have a break. Okay, let me have a break. Am I really following Hipaa? That's why I say perform a periodic technical and non-technical evaluation based initially upon the standard implemented under this rule, the Hipaa rule, in response to the environmental operational changes affecting the security of electronic protected health information that establishes the extent to which an entity security policies and procedures meet the requirement of the Hipaa, right? So at a point in time, Hipaa says that, hey, have a break. Have a break. Just stop. Maybe every 6 months. Have a break, right? Sometimes the environment can be a fast-paced environment, and certain things that you're supposed to do, you don't do it. So Hipaa says, look, in order not to miss certain key things, right, have a break and evaluate environment, right, to see whether you are doing things right, right? So here, you may want to have some documents to evaluate. I think the audit comes in here, right? Like, I think you talk about that, right? Auditing, right? Continuous monitoring. As you do continuous monitoring of your environment, testing controls to see whether they are working, right? System and application evaluations. You're evaluating your system. Are the systems really working well, right? Are the application is working effectively? Are they secure, right? Auditing your systems, right? So evaluation covers that. And here, those are the documents you can request for to see whether they are evaluating their environment continuously. Then you want to check how often, right? How often systems and applications are tested or evaluated, right? So we will learn about vendor security assessment. We will learn something about reassessment, security reassessment. At a point in time, you need to do a reassessment, depending on the criticality of the engagement. If it's a high risk system, you may want to do every year, you have to do risk assessment, right? So we'll learn about that in the vendor risk, right? Good. So that is what goes into the evaluation. The last part under the administrative is business associate agreement, right? It's business associate agreement. I think I missed the title, but I have the requirement here. That's written contract. Written contract. So HIPAA requires that there need to be a written contract. And I've been talking about some specific document. The last time I mentioned it, right? BAA, what's the full name for BAA? BAA.
Business impact analysis.
Business
associate agreement.
Business associate agreement.
Yeah, sorry.
Right. Thank you. Business associate agreement. So that is a BAA. But what triggers BAA to be signed? What triggers BAA to be signed? Yes, Abrea.
That's whenever there's going to be any type of engagement to PHI from an outside vendor.
Excellent. Excellent. Anytime PHI is involved with an outside vendor, you have to make sure you sign a BA. You have to make sure you have a BA. And when you are reviewing BA document of existing vendor engagement that they have signed, right? One, you have to make sure that all signatories have signed, right? Because a document without a signature is not binding, right? It's not. So somebody from your company should sign, and the vendor side should also what? To sign, right? So BA must have signatories, they must have dates, right? Then also say that the protecting PHI at the contractor's environment is very, very important. And like I said, most of the times it's the legal department that handles the verbiage of this document. We don't handle the verbiage. But when we are doing an engagement, we want to make sure that any contractor we are going to share data with, they have a BA in place. And if they are going to, if that contractor is also going to share our data with a subcontractor, there should be a downstream BA, right? So our contractor should sign another BA with their with their contractor. Good. So that brings us to the end of the administrative. You see, it's a lot. It's not a one-day job. You can never do this assessment in one day. So it's not a one-day job. So it takes time, but we've been able to cover the administrative. Good. So the first part under the physical side is facility access control or physical access control. So under that, we have contingency operations. Establish and implement as needed procedure that allow facility access in support of restoration of lost data under the disaster recovery plan and emergency mode operation plan in an event of an emergency. So when an emergency happens, it's not only this, the technical system that we want to salvage or we want to save. What about the physical environment? Some of you, if you have watched movies, sometimes some people, the bad actors, or they cause distraction, or they create something that they do something that creates an alarm. Maybe they sound the fire alarm so that people will be running here and there so that they will be able to move into the secure zone and cause harm, right? So what plan do you have in place, right? Physical plan such that when something happens, disaster happens within the environment, somebody, whilst people are moving out of the environment or moving out of the company, bad actors will not go to the facility and steal data or cause a harm, right? So I think in most organizations, whenever a disaster or something is activated, physical security stands at the main entrance and make sure that people can go out, but nobody can come in, right? Good. So that is some of the measures that they take in place. I mean, they do to make sure that PHI is protected, right? We are treating PHI as gold. It's very, very important. So here, what type of document do you think we can refer to, or we can ask them to provide, where we can see that they have measures in place to I mean, physically protect the environment when there is a disaster? Yes, Betty.
We can also look at the disaster recovery plan.
I agree with you.
The
What else?
contingency plan.
Mm-hmm. Zulu, let Zulu add some to it. Contingency plan. Then Zulu, what else?
Facility access policy.
Facility access, very good. That is the same as the physical access control policy. I agree with you, right? Ruth, you wanted to add more to it?
I also think you can find some of it in the disaster recovery plan, right?
Yes.
Because everything should be laid out in that plan on how to recover.
I agree with you guys. Good. John.
Okay, so in my job, we call it ERP, which is Emergency Response Plan. So it's the same as the facility plan, so just chip it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me keep it as it is. So yeah, so companies, different companies, and how they want to name it. Good. Good. So what do you want to see here? Right. I think I mentioned some of them. Emergency, let me just copy and paste it there for the sake of time. Then I just go through. Right. Emergency procedure for staff and property. Right. You need to have emergency procedure for staff and property. Secure the environment from theft in an emergency. Secure PHI access in an emergency situation. Right. Like I said, the bad actors, they'll create an emergency situation. Then whilst all the attention is on maybe saving people's life, they are back there trying to bolt away with PHI or protected information. Data restoration processes. So what are you going to do to restore data whenever such a situation happens, right? Maybe there's a blackout or something like that. Good. Now, facility security plan. Implement policies and procedure to safeguard the facility and the equipment therein from unauthorized physical access, tampering, and theft, right? So what policy or document can we see this? I can see it right there. Yeah, Zulu.
The same I said previously, it was a facility access policy.
Mm-hmm. So physical access control policy. Then some companies also have facility security plan, right? They draw a plan that tells you about the various security points, right? Good. So here, all that you want to see is, so what measures have they put in place to safeguard PHI, right? So in this case, that is when you are doing the walkthroughs. Most of the times, physical security is done through walkthroughs. When you say walkthrough, you take a walk to the facility, right? You have your notebook and your pen, walking around. You look at the entrances and the exits. Are there CCTV? Like when somebody is entering the facility, is there a camera to capture the people? Is there maybe a security person at the entrance, right? Are the data centers, are they locked, right? Where people handle PHI, right? Have they left papers all over around that contain PHI. We take a look at all these things. Very, very important. Access control and validation. Implement procedures to control and validate persons' access to facility based on their role or function, including visitor control and control of access to software programs for testing and revision. So what document? What document are we looking at? So here, physical security policy. Physical security policy 2 is huge, right? You can see some of these statements or these controls in there, right? So you want to see, when you get physical security policy, what do you want to see? Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, Ruth, you can add up to this.
I'm just thinking the physical control that the security pretty much performs, the physical activities that the security performs to make sure that security is available.
Okay. Yep. Yep. So these are all part of it, like a security guard at the entrance, maybe going through a security scan, or they checking that you don't have anything on you that can compromise the organization's environment. When I used to work at the VA at Austin, every day we go through security checks, right? They will check your bags, check the laptop that you are bringing. If you're coming with your personal laptop, they check the phone, right? You go through the scanner. They actually do serious security check on you before you go into the environment or the main building. So staff access badge, very, very important, right? People wearing badges, right? Badge in, badge out, right? Or people require code to enter into secure areas. Data center doors are locked, right? It's very, very important. Very, very important. Data center doors shouldn't be open. Are they locked? Right? So when you're doing your walkthroughs, you just want to touch the door and see whether it's open. Even though it is locked, but I still just want to confirm, right? Check the door whether it can open. If it is open, that is a finding, right? Good. And some of the walkthroughs that I've done, they use the data center, the server room, or maybe the closet is the same. They use it as a storage, which is serious. So if somebody, a delivery person, is delivering a goods, so you can take it to the storage. The person is a hacker, right? Or the person can even go and sell you to a hacker that, look, this covered entity, when you go and deliver the goods, they ask you to go to the storage and deposit over there. I mean, leave it in the storage. And that the storage is where they have their servers in there. Bingo, the hacker comes, pretend to be a delivery. Maybe you go and work with a company that does delivery or whatever it is, or they can pretend we are coming to deliver. Okay, you can go there, go and drop it there. They go in there. All that they need is about 2 or 3 minutes, right? They can plug in a rogue device, right? Any device that can just use it to infiltrate or exfiltrate data, right? All that they need is just an access. 1 minute is enough for them. They just enter, they go into the server, then they put in that device. You wouldn't see if you're not a person who work on the system, or you don't have what we call asset monitoring, asset management system, you may not be able to see, and they will be on your network collecting people's credentials and other things. So some of these things you don't take it lightly, right? If it is a server room, it's server room. You want to check all those things when you are doing your walkthroughs. It shouldn't be a server room serving as a storage. No. Good. Maintenance records. Implement policies and procedures to document repairs and modification to the physical component of the facility which are related to security. For example, hardware, walls, doors, and locks, right? So where can we have, what document can we see this? that talks about maintenance records. I think somebody mentioned it earlier on, right? Maintenance records. So here we can find this within the physical security policy or maintenance book or logs. Anytime a maintenance is done within the facility, there must be records on that. Who came to do the maintenance? At what time? Who escorted him? What time did they leave? Right? It's very, very important, especially data centers. If they go inside, right, somebody has to escort them. Or if somebody's coming, so I'm coming from Xfinity to, I heard your internet is down, I'm coming to check your server, whatever it is, right? The front desk should be able to call somebody who is in charge of the data center and walk the person in there. If it is true, stay with the person while the person is working until the person is done before the two of them leaves, right? You don't leave them there and you stand by them. You watch everything that they are doing, right? So it's really, really important, physical security. So here, what do you want to do? You want to check, right? Records on maintenance, the maintenance log, records on people, that's person who did the maintenance, right? The check the timing, right? Let's say maybe how do we say the book that we sign, whenever we sign, it's called log, right? In a way, it's the same log. When you go and do a work and you are leaving, you sign in and you sign out. That is a log, right? You check all those things. Good. The next one is workstation use. Workstation use is on its own, right? It's a requirement on its own. It doesn't have a sub. So workstation use, right? Workstation use, you can find that in physical access control policy is another big policy, and also a clear desk policy. Some companies, they develop a clear desk policy, right? So you should be able to tell people how they should use their how they call it, the workstation. And like I said, the workstation is the area where people, I mean, the workforce have their laptop or their phone or the PDA or the tablets, right? When they are working, that area becomes their workstation. As you are home now, you're sitting behind your PC, that environment is your workstation, right? So you want to see unattended computers are logged. I mean, you should be able to state clearly that if your computer, nobody is sitting behind a computer, it should be locked, right? Cabinets are locked with keys. So walkthroughs, when you are doing walkthroughs at the facilities, you try to open drawers and see whether they are open, right? There shouldn't be any PHI paper or PHI lying on the tables, right? There should be proper key management. If somebody has to have access to a particular room with PHI, who authorize people to have that key to go in there, like a chat room, right? Nobody can just walk into a chat room, right? So there has to be a proper key management. So those are some of the things that should happen within the workstation. Then we have workstation security, right? Workstation security, I'm trying to go fast because we just hit the 2-hour mark, right? I don't want to go too long so that when you're playing back, it becomes boring or it becomes too long for you. So workstation security, we can find this also within the access control policy. That is the physical access control policy. So when we are doing a walkthrough, what do we want to see? Workstation security, right? We want to see that there are screensavers, Do they have screensavers on the monitors? Has the monitors been positioned in a way that when you are standing at the counter, you will not see what they are doing. You will not be able to see PHI, right? The printers, where have they placed them? The fax machines, are they in a secure room? The printers, does it require you to badge in before it prints for you, or is the one that old school printer that you issue the command, then it prints, then you go and pick it? So somebody times you issue a command, the person steals that PHI, you get there, there's nothing, oh, the printer is not working, let me go and issue another command, right? Somebody has stolen it. So you check all those things, right? People hiding passwords under the seats, right? Are the screens protected, right? Apart from the screensavers, do people require username and password to go to the screen to access PHI? Or anytime you shake the mouse, the screen open for you to see everything? All those things are checked, right, when you are doing the walkthroughs. Device and media is a big one. Device and media is a big one. So here we have disposal. Implement policies. Under this, we have requirements. So we have implement policies and procedures to address the final disposition of electronic protected health information and or the hardware or electronic media on which it is stored. So here, the documents that we can ask them to provide for us for review can be a physical access policy, right? Or device and media control policy. That is also a huge one, right? Or maybe asset management policy. It can be within that, depending on the organization, how they choose to name their document, right? So here, what do you want to see here? How PHI is cleaned, right? How do they clean PHI on a device, right? Or on a media. When you talk about media, it can be a hard drive or it can be an external drive, right? It can be external drive just like this, right? External drive. I'm sure some of you have some of these, right? So if you are within the health environment and you're using an external drive and you want to dispose this, right? How do you clean it? Clear all PHI out of it before you dispose it off or reuse. That is the next one, right? So it's very, very important. So how media is clean media is mostly the hard drive and the RAM, right, in the computer. How do you clean it? How do you wipe it, right, before you dispose it off? I remember some years ago, companies came to donate computers in our school back home. That was very old. That was the time computers were becoming popular. And you go there, you can see all their files and the document. Now it's no more. They notice that it's people use it as a point to get more information about them. So now before you donate, you wipe everything, right? What about you want to reuse it, right? The same policy. You can find this within the same policy. Maybe the hard drive is not spoiled, right? You want to reuse it. So what do you do, right? You want to reuse it. So you want to make sure, it's the same thing, right? You want to make sure that the media that you are going to reuse, maybe one computer got broken, but the hard drive is okay, everything, right? You take the hard drive, you clean it before you reuse it, right? Because you don't know what PHI you are transferring to other person. It could be that the person do not need access to those PHI, right? You need to wipe it and make sure it is clean. There's nothing, no information on it before it is reused. Accountability: maintain records of movement of hardware and electronic media and any person responsible thereof. So if you have to move media from one location to another location, maybe you have different campuses, right? Hipaa requires that keep records on them. Maintain records anytime you are moving. That, okay, sorry. I mean, the document that we look at first is asset management policy. It can be physical access control policy, device and media control policy, right? So you need to keep records on them. It's very, very important, right? So that you know that at this point in time, this device that I move from this end to the other end, this is the device that I moved. This is, every device must have a record, right? It must have an asset tag. In a work environment, when you come here, my job work, I have a PC here that I have a tag on it, right? There's a tag on it so that when it is moved, they know that this device is assigned to Alex and it has been moved to this particular point in time, or it has moved to another location, right? Good. So records of media movement, record all computer records on all computers and devices, right? It's very, very important. You must keep asset inventory, right? It's very, very important. Number and name all assets, right? And when you go on site and you are doing assessment, check the tag. It's like this. You can see a tag on my computer. Check the tag. Sometimes you can ask for asset inventory list, right? Search for asset inventory list, then check the tag. Are they right asset, or there is a rogue? When they say rogue asset, means that a malicious asset that somebody has plugged on the environment, right? So you check asset whether they have the right tagging and naming, right? So those are very, very important during your walkthroughs. Data backup. Create retrievable exact copies, right, of electronic protected health information when needed before movement. So when you are moving data from one campus to another campus, HIPAA requires that you should create exact copies, right? So that along the way, if something happened, you are being attacked, or maybe you lose the computer, you lose a laptop, right? You will be able to have what? Exact copies of that data that you were moving. So here we can also find it within the physical access control and device and media control policy. That's what I said. That policy too is that area is also big, right? So what do you want to check here? Media backup before transportation. Media backup. Sometimes, like, some covered entities are still backing up using hard tape or maybe hard drives. Some companies come to take them to offsite. Make sure you have exact copies of whatever they are taking, right? Because you may never know what happened on the way, right? And I always tell people, some of these bullion vans that you see them with well-armed people around, it's not all of them that are carrying money. Some of them are carrying companies' data, right? Some of them are carrying companies' data, so they have to be secure, right? You know, data nowadays is, I mean, we are in information era. So data is money. If you have, the more you have data, the more you have money. So big data, AI. So people treat data as money. Okay, now the last part, that is the logical access control, or the technical side, right? The logical access control. Under that, we have unique username, user identification. Unique user identification. So assign a unique username and or number for identifying and tracking identity, right? So what document do you think we can find this? Yes, can somebody try? So this is going to be logical access control policy, right? But some companies just have it as access control policy, right? So I try to make a distinction. So logical means dealing with computers, technical stuff, right? But some, they just call it access control policy, right? So, but physical access control is mostly all the time physical access control. But whenever you see access control policy, sometimes it could be made up of both physical and logical. They put it together. So always take note of that, right? So, but when you're talking about this technical side of it, then it should be logical access control, or the side that talks about how people have access to the computer. That is what you need to, that's the area you need to look. So here you want to see that access to system, anybody that have access to the system, it could be an EHR, electronic health records, right? Or maybe any application that they are using to process PHI, protected health information. Anybody that have access to it must be assigned a username. ANAT, ARB, right? J and Hipaa, something like that. That's a unique to an individual. Everybody must have a unique username and a unique identity, and they must have a user role, right? Saying that this person is a nurse, he belongs to the nurse role. This person is a doctor, he belongs to a doctor's role. That is how it's supposed to be, right? So assign user roles. The next one, emergency access procedure. Establish procedure for obtaining necessary electronic protected health information during an emergency. So if there is an emergency, people need to log into the computer to access PHI to save life. There need to be a process in place, right? So here we can find it within the same policy and also in disaster recovery plan, right? Or maybe contingency plan. You can find it in that during an emergency, you have to follow A, B, C, D to be able to access PHI. Other than that, if you access PHI when it is not an emergency, then you are going against the law, right? So anytime an emergency is activated, you should have a process that people can follow to assess PHI to save life, right? So what do you look out for? When you get such a document, right, you want to look at how EPHI is assessed from the system in an emergency situation, right? Is there any emergency authorization process that people have to follow? Right. Otherwise, people who want to be inquisitive, they know because they heard a celebrity sportsman had come to visit the covered entity or the hospital. They want to check, okay, what is the reason that brought this person here? Out of curiosity, they want to go and check the person's record, right? And then they say, oh, I assess it based on it was because it's an emergency. But was it authorized? Was it, I mean, the emergency situation activated so that people cannot use that as an excuse? Automatic log off, right? Automatic log off, if you have gone through the understanding control, is part of it, right? Implement electronic procedure that terminates an electronic session after a predetermined time of inactivity. The key word is inactivity. You leave your computer lying down, nothing is happening. What should your computer do? Should it still keep on exhibiting PHI on it that anybody that passed by should see what you are doing? No. Right? So the document that we can refer to can be the same logical access policy or access control policy, right? And you want to check within that covered entity, right? How many minutes have they set their system to automatically go off, right? So sometimes you may just have to go to when you're doing your walkthroughs or you're doing assessment, right? You just ask somebody to, okay, per your policy, you said that your system should be, when you are inactive for 10 minutes, your system should shut down or should log you off. Okay, now don't touch your mouse. Everybody should sit down quietly. Let's wait for 10 minutes and see whether the system screen will log you off. That's it. If it does, they pass. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it hasn't done that. I mean, if it passed their time based on their policy, then they failed, right? So that is how the assessment is done, automatic log off. Encryption and decryption. Implement a mechanism to encrypt and decrypt electronic protected health information. So here we can also find this within the logical access control policy, right? And also data encryption policy. Some companies have data encryption policy. So what type of encryption are they using? If the data is at rest, if the data is in motion, right? What type of encryption are they using, right? You want to check all, right? So most of the times, if the data is at rest, they use what we call AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, right? 256 bits. No worry, I need that. That's fine, right? 256 bits, right? And data in transit, when the data is being moved from one end to another, right? It has to go through what we call TLS, right? So we'll learn about transmission security when we get to, I'll share a document with you, maybe tonight, right? And you see various types of transmission securities that protect data. Key management, how do they manage the encryption key, right? Then data masking, right? Sometimes you are entering PHI or a medical record. Maybe the last four should be visible. Then the first six shouldn't be, right? Do they have any kind of that process in place so that people cannot see sensitive data? Audit control, right? Audit control has come here again. So we have logical access control policy and audit control policy. It's very, very important, audit control policy. So here, what do you want to see? You want to see how often systems or application logs are checked, right? Remember, we talked about people need to be educated. That look, as you use our system, we'll keep records on you. But how often do you have a dedicated person? Do the company have a dedicated person to check those logs, to review those logs, right? To see that people are actually complying with the law, right? So it can be system logs, right? Then how people, normally use the system itself. Then the authentication logs. Anytime somebody log in, username Anati, then they enter their password, they hit enter. Then the system say no, bad password, right? That is authentication logs. That's a system. When somebody try to log in more than necessary and the system locks, then it should give you an idea that somebody is trying to do what we call brute force, meaning the person is trying to guess somebody's password to see whether they will be able to enter the system. It is the logs, activity review, that will be able to give you that kind of idea about how people are using your system, not only your employees, but also outside hackers that are trying to come into your network, right? Good. And every system has its own time, right? We call something time synchronization, right? The system clock should be able to synchronize with the timing, the normal timing, so that when a hacker comes in, you'll be able to know the time of that they mostly come onto your environment, right? Integrity, I think that should be the last but one or two. Yeah, we are almost done. Integrity standards will implement policies and procedure to protect electronic protected health information from improper alteration and destruction. So under integrity, we have only one side, that is mechanism to authenticate PHI, right? Mechanism. So implement electronic mechanism to collaborate that electronic protected health information has not been altered or destroyed in any unauthorized manner, right? So what can you do to protect the EPHI so that nobody can change it? If the result came out negative, it should be able to remain negative throughout the life cycle of that system, right? It should remain like that. Good. Then what do you check? So we call something digital signature, right? Digital signature is a form of non-repudiation. Non-repudiation, like I said, if you sign your prescription with a digital signature, nobody can change it. That this is not you. They know that it's coming from this doctor, so we trust it is correct, right? Checks and balances. Make sure that everything that A is doing, B is also doing the same thing. So everything is in sync, right? It gives you that that assurance that this is secure. This is true. Hashing. When you develop a software, they create a hash. The hash tells you that this is how the software is made up. Let's say maybe it's an application everybody is downloading and using, right? If somebody do some alteration, or somebody try to copy it and create a fake one just to steal somebody's information, the hashing will not match, right? When you run the hashing, it's a little bit technical. When you run, you see that no, this is not the original. This is a fake one, right? So that's what hashing does. Person and entity authentication. So that is also on its own. So here we are talking about checking whether the right people are the people who are supposed to be having access to PHI. You are verifying. You can find this within the logical access control policy, right? So here we want to check how authentication, right? What authentication method does your company allow for people to have access to PHI, right? Authentication means that you are verifying that this is indeed Alex, right? It will require that before somebody accesses a PHI, it requires a username that is organization provisioned, then a password that is also created by the person. So that's username and password. And maybe if the person is accessing it out of the organization's campus, maybe remote, it requires a two-factor authentication or multi-authentication, right? And sometimes it requires federated access. We are almost done. Federated access is, we call it single sign-on. Single sign-on. So companies create so many, sometimes there are so many applications that people are using on organization. But it becomes very difficult for people to track passwords. So maybe they use, if you don't have a federated access, right? People will use one password for this application, the different password, different password, they lose track. That is where people tend to write password down, right? So if it is federated, right, then it means that the same password, if the system is integrated with your password, they have a couple of them. One is called SAML, right? The System Access Makeup Language, LDAP. I've forgotten the full name. There's an Okta. There's a there are different types, right? So if they have it, then that whoever is logging into a system that contains PHI, right? If it is integrated with a single sign-on, it's the same username and password they can use to enter into multiple applications. So it makes life easier for your staff so that people don't write passwords and keep it down, keep it somewhere. The last one that we're going to talk about is integrity, that is transmission security, right? So under that, we have integrity control. It said implement security measures to ensure that electronically transmitted, electronic protected health information is not improperly modified without detection until disposed of, right? So what do you do so that your PHI that you are using, nobody can dispose it of, right? Sorry, somebody can modify it until it is disposed of. So here, it can also be found within the same policy. So logical access control policy is huge, or access control policy is a huge policy. So the same policy, you can find that within. So here we're talking about encryption, right? The same thing that we talked about earlier on, right? Encryption, and I think I introduced another term here. So the encryption of data in transit and at rest. We'll learn about TLS 1.2 and 1.3, maybe the next two classes. Digital certificates or signature hashing. HL7. HL7 is mostly used within the healthcare environment when you are transmitting data from one end to another, right? It's also another way of securing the data. Then the last one is encryption itself. Implement mechanism to encrypt electronic protected health information whenever deemed appropriate. So here we can find it within the logical access policy, access control policy, and data encryption policy, right? And since it's an encryption, data at rest, we use AES. That is the golden standard, right? So the AES is for data at rest, right? Anytime, we don't need to do the technicality of the encryption. If you are doing an assessment, so we encrypt data at rest, right? All that you want to know, what type of keys are you using? If they are using 128, it's not secured, right? But 256 bits is a secured one, right? For data at rest, HTTPS, right? That is the URL where you enter www.com. If it is not S, right? If S is not part of it, let's say this one, you can see here. Can you see my screen? You see the policy here that I highlighted. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, HTTPS. The S that is added to it tells you that it is secured, right? It is secured. Or sometimes you have the padlock here that is closed, right? The padlock means it's closed, means that it's secure. That's HTTPS, means that anything that you put on this website, if there is a place that you have to log in, it tells you that wherever from your source to the destination where that the data is going to is secure. If there's no padlock and there's no S to it, don't put your sensitive data there. It's not secure. Right. Good. Then I also have TLS. So we'll talk about TLS extensively later. Right. We'll talk about TLS. Oh, good. We have TLS 1.2. I'll teach you how to test for TLS, right? To see whether the transmission security is secure or is not secure. And you can add it to your documentation. It's one of the part of the training that we'll be doing, how to test those things. So that is for data in transit, the data that is moving from your part, the source, to a destination. Is it going through an encrypted channel, right? We have others that are not secure. TLS 1.1, SSL 3, version 3, they are all not secure. We'll learn about that later on. But for now, whenever you hear something about transmission security, you want to check, is it TLS 1.2 or TLS 1.3? Data at rest, AES 256-bit. That tells you that the data is encrypted with a secure key, right? So that is it for the Hipaa security, right, assessment. And we're going to touch, coming Saturday, we're going to add one model that I added to it. It wasn't part of it. I added it 2 years ago, and already I have like 2 people working in that area. It's called high trust. So high trust and Hipaa kind of go hand in hand, right? And that is going to be I think it's one of the shortest. So Saturday may be one of the shortest training. So after the high trust, then we'll take a look at the Hipaa and high trust jobs, right? We'll just Google and see how the jobs look like, right? So most times, if it's a Hipaa assessment, if you're a Hipaa assessor, they want you to know high trust as well, right? So we'll end the Hipaa here today, and I will just pause here. Any questions? If there's any question, the floor is open. Pardon me, today I have to go a little bit beyond the 2 hours, but it is really, really important. And I'm very passionate at this side. That was my first job in security, right? And I've had a couple of my recent students, some of them have gotten job in this area, Hipaa. So they are there. You can get a job in that area too.
Then turn right onto Briar West Boulevard.
Vincent, you're not on mute. Okay, let me mute you. Good. Okay, Bernard, any question before we end today?
Yeah, this is a question, this is a request. So are we going to have access to these notes for our reference?
Bernard, you shouldn't ask me this. You have this already. You are my old student.
Right? Yeah, but for some
anyway,
reason,
I
lost some of them for some reason.
You lost them. Okay, no worries. So you will have it. So that is what we've done in class. So like I said earlier on, this is going to be some of add-on to your documentation, so that when you're performing Hipaa, you have it at your back and you'll be raising your shoulder and looking at it to ask your questions and asking for the documentation and reviewing them to see whether they have the right information in there. Yes, Ruth. So I'll share with you after tonight's class. Ruth.
So the question I have is, Hipaa is mostly associated with medical institutions, right? So when you are looking for a job, do you have to have that experience, or can you incorporate Hipaa kind of rules within some corporate America, which is not health institutions?
So the question is, now Hipaa is applied anyway. I've had a student working with a law firm, working as a Hipaa officer. Corporate institutions, they require HIPAA because people subscribe to health plans and other things and medical records. So now HIPAA, if we'll take a look at some of the job description, you'll be surprised some companies that will pull up and they are looking for somebody with knowledge in HIPAA.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, HIPAA it covers a broad area of job. So it can be with a covered entity, or you can even be with a corporate America. And one thing that if you know HIPAA, you know high trust, you know vendor risk, you have a good platform to get a job in GRC, we call it governance, risk, and compliance, right? We'll take a look at all these job descriptions and you see that will help you when you are doing your job search, how to approach it. They go hand in hand. I have most of my students working in the healthcare environment doing vendor, but because they know HIPAA very well, that gave them the chance to be able to convince whoever is interviewing them that they have the right candidate. And indeed, they are doing very well. Good. So thank you so much for tonight. Let me save this. This is a very good document we've worked on tonight. I've actually put today's date at the end of it. So as soon as we finish this tonight, I'm going to share this with you, add it to your documentation. But one last thing before we call it a day, right? I also shared with you a spreadsheet, Excel sheet, right? That nobody requested. I mean, asked of it, why did Alex share this document with us? But that contains details. If you were able to take a look at this document, you will see that all that we talked about tonight, the details are here. HIPAA security management process. Inquire of management as to whether formal or informal policies practice exist to conduct accurate assessment of potential risk and vulnerabilities to confidentiality, blah, blah, blah. Then here they give you implementation guidance, audit procedure, obtain and review relevant documentation, and evaluate the content relative to specified criteria for an assessment of potential risk and vulnerability. Evidence of covered entity risk assessment process. Methodology considers the elements in the criteria and has been updated or maintained to reflect changes in the covered entity's environment. Next, determine if the covered entity risk assessment has been conducted on periodic basis. Determine if the covered entity has identified all systems that contain processes or transmit PHI. So this document tells you everything that we have done tonight, right? So all that you need is you have your review note. When you get a document, the evidence is here, the review note, whatever you found in the document. So this is also one of your documents. I mean, the HIPAA, this is a template that I use to do detailed report for my clients that I've performed security assessment for. So this is also a good one, right? So when if you get a HIPAA job, before you start, please take your time and review this. So you see, we talked about assigned security responsibility. Said determine that the roles and responsibilities of security official have been clearly identified in the job description. So if you had taken time to review this ahead of time, some of these things that we went through would have been easy for you. So everything is here. In addition to what you have this in your email, right? So I'm going to add what we have done to it to you, so that you have a complete HIPAA right? Anytime you see HIPAA job, don't let it go. It's one of the easiest job you can do. Good. On this note, thank you so much for tonight. And those of you who made your second payment, thank you so much. I took some people off. I mean, I'm tired of being lenient, right? So I took some people off. So they are no more on the platform. But if you also have to do your portion and you haven't done it, please, this may also be your last class. Thank you so much. And as I'll see you on Saturday, we're going to do high trust. It's also an interesting area that we're going to learn a lot. So see you and have a good night. Thank you.
Good night, Mr. Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Alex,
you.
thank you, Mr.
All right, good
Alex.
night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you
Good
so much.
night.
So much. Thank you so much.
Have a nice
Thank you,
night.
Nana. Thank you. Let me stop the recording so that the video will drop. Wow, 2 hours, 40 minutes.